Hello, lovely people. So today I'm going to be reading a couple stories from the little book of bedtime stories. The first story I'm going to be reading is Lilith's Fairy Dust Hat. I hope you like it. Lilith, the littlest fairy, had lost her flower petal hat. "I need a brand new one," she said, and flew off to look for a new one right away. The littlest fairy picked up the first flower she came up to and popped it on top of her head. "How do I look?" she asked a dragonfly that was hovering close by. "As silly as can be," he replied. "Then how about a red poppy hat?" Lilith asked him, when she had chosen another flower. "Poppies make you sneeze. And by the way, you have a smudge of black pollen right at the tip of your nose." And with that, he fluttered back to his home by the river, chuckling all the way. Next, Lilith tried a daisy hat, but it was far too heavy and a wee bit old-fashioned. "I know," cried the littlest fairy. "A foxglove bell would fit me just beautifully." But she was wrong. The hat was too big. Lilith was lost inside and had to call for help. Now the fairy queen, who always knew what was happening to every fairy, was absolutely brilliant at choosing hats. "For you, the softest thistledown," said the fairy queen, and with the wave of her magic wand, the sprinkling of fairy dust, there was Lilith's new hat. How it sparkled and twinkled, how it glittered in the sunlight. "A perfect hat for the littlest fairy," said the fairy queen, smiling at Lilith. Then, the next story I'm going to be reading is The Musical Party Dresses. Rosie, Jim, Tilda, and Bridget dressed as identical uniforms for the school, because that was the rule. But when they went to parties, they liked to look different. One afternoon, when the girls arrived at home from school, their mom had something exciting to tell them. "You've been invited to a party," said Mom. "It's at 5 o'clock tomorrow, and you have to dress up in a costume." The four girls shrieked. "We don't have any costumes to wear," they cried. "And tomorrow is the school play." "No problem," said Mom. "I can go shopping in the morning and choose some great outfits for you." Rosie, Jim, Tilda, and Bridget ran to their mom and gave her a hug. They all stepped back and took deep breaths. "I want to go as a princess," said Rosie. "I want to go as a ballerina," said Jim. "I want to go as a mermaid," said Tilda. "And I want to go in a sparkly dress," giggled Bridget. The next morning, Mom went off to the mall and came back much later with lots of shopping bags. The four girls talked about the party all day at school and came home feeling very excited. When Mom unpacked the dresses, Rosie, Jim, Tilda, and Bridget were thrilled to bits. "I don't know which one to choose," said Rosie. "We don't either," said Tilda and Jim. "They're all so sparkly," giggled Bridget. The four girls couldn't decide which to wear, and they changed their minds several times. Mom, however, knew exactly how to solve the problem. She put the dresses in a large bag and switched on some music. "Pass the bags around, girls," she shouted. And when the music stops, the one holding the bag puts on the dress that is inside and wears it for the party. The first time the music stopped, Rosie was holding the bag. "Great," she cried. "Mine's the mermaid costume." And she passed the bag on. When the music stopped again, it was Tilda this time. "Brilliant," she laughed. "I've got the ballerina's dress." And she passed the bag on. Jim was next, and the music stopped. "Wow," she gasped. "I'm going to be dressed as a princess." She passed the bag to Bridget. Hers was the last dress of all, and she put her hand in the bag and pulled out the final costume. "Mine is the sparkliest one of all," she giggled. The bag was empty, and Rosie, Jim, and Tilda and Bridget were ready to go to the party. So the next story I'm going to be reading wanted to show you that. I love that story. So the next one I'm going to be reading is going to be Whitney the Witch. When Charlie went back to school one Monday morning, he could hardly believe his eyes. Sitting at a desk next to him was a little girl dressed as a witch. "Please take care of our new pupil," the teacher, Miss Plum, said to Charlie. "Her name is Whitney, and she will be with us for the rest of the year." "Do you always come to school dressed in a weird outfit?" asked Charlie the moment Miss Plum was out of earshot. Whitney shrugged her shoulders and looked puzzled. "Every witch I know dresses like this," she said. "I don't believe it," Charlie sighed. "I have to look after a girl who thinks she's a real witch. Great." Charlie slumped down in his chair and put his head on his desk with a mighty thump. "Ouch, that hurt," howled Charlie, as a big purple bruise appeared on his brow. "This'll make it better," said Whitney, with a sweet smile. She tapped Charlie's head with her wand, and the bruise vanished. Right there and then, Charlie knew she was a real witch, and that a real witch with real magic wand could make school very interesting. "Do I call you Witch Whitney?" he asked. "Just Whitney will do," the young witch replied, unpacking her school bag. As the weeks went by, Charlie discovered Whitney was the cleverest of witches. She got top grades on every test, and her homework was always correct. "Why do you bother doing any work at all?" Charlie asked Whitney one day. "Just wave your wand and the lessons will be done." "That's strictly against the rules." Whitney sounded quite shocked. "Witches must learn things for themselves and never use magic at school." "You made the bruise on my head disappear by magic," Charlie pointed out to her. "That was an emergency," whispered Whitney. Then one morning, Whitney went up to Mrs. Plum's desk to have her homework graded, and left her magic wand on the desk. Without thinking what might happen, Charlie grabbed the wand and pointed it at a computer. "Vanish," he ordered, and it did. Not satisfied with that, he pointed the wand at a model of a dinosaur on Mrs. Plum's desk. "Come alive," he ordered, and it did. As the dinosaur lumbered through the classroom, it kept growing and growing, and by the time it had crossed the hall and stepped outside into the playground, it was enormous. The bell for the morning recess had just rung, and the children had gone out to play. "What is that?" shouted the big boys as they spotted the dinosaur. Is it going to eat me? Asked one of the little girls. He's a dinosaur. He won't eat you because he's a vegetarian, said Whitney, who had just come onto the playground with Charlie. That's all right then, yelled the children. Come on, let's play with the dinosaur. Charlie looked sheepishly at Whitney. Sorry for using your magic wand. Mind if I go and play with the dinosaur? To his amazement, Whitney wasn't the least bit cross. I've broken the first rule of magic, she said. You must always keep your wand with you at all times. So it's really my fault. He started to giggle. I'm going to play with the dinosaur too. No one seemed to mind the dinosaur at school. Miss Plum took him right away because he wiped his feet well on wet days, and he kept the children quiet with his wonderful stories. The dinosaur delighted the ladies who served the school lunch. He was always eating his vegetables, and so did the children. At the end of each day, when it was time to go home, Miss Plum had a golden rule. The dinosaur must be back on my desk as soon as dismissal bell rings, she said. Then Whitney would wave her magic wand, and the dinosaur would become a model once more. Cute story. I love reading stories, and I really hope that you enjoyed my last video where I read a story, and I really hope you enjoyed this as well. They bring a smile to my face, and I hope that they brought a smile to your face too. Have a wonderful day.